Lots of lovely parts for the Z3. Yes, there are literally parts everywhere for this car. There's been a big delivery from Autodoc. More about this in a minute. Those of you who follow my channel will know that I'd had problems with the bonnet release mechanism on this car, and I'd just ordered the components from BMW. These have now arrived and the job is complete. And there's a reason why there isn't a video on this, because that repair became rather more urgent than I had expected. Because I discovered purely by accident that the MOT on my E90 had actually expired. And this meant I had to break my very own rule. You see, when I collected this Z3, I looked it deep in the headlights and said to it, "Don't worry, you're never going to have to get wet again. You're going to live in the dry, in the garage, and you're only ever going to come out on sunny days." And what have I had to do? Drive it in the rain. Not just any rain, but some of the worst rain I've seen all year. Now this turned out to actually be a very good test, because it doesn't leak at all. It's bone dry in there, and I didn't expect that with such an old thing. Now I needed to get this Z3 back on the road really quickly because it was actually dismantled. The headlights were out because they needed to come out to replace the lock mechanisms. On a car with aircon, you really can't get them out any other way. So headlamps were out, they were being buffed, and the car was not in a state of readiness. So I had to really hurriedly get this thing on the road so I could use it for an early shift the next morning, and that does involve about a 3 o'clock alarm call. There wasn't much time. So everything did go back together. It had its new bonnet lock latches, the cable that goes between the two. As I said earlier, just a tip, because of all of this for the HVAC, you can't easily remove these that way. So I took out the headlights, very straightforward. Bolt there, one that you can access through there, one that you can access through there, and the headlights are out. You don't have to take the bumper off or anything like that like you do with a lot of cars. It's really straightforward and actually quite a nice job. And I also got to buff up those lights as well. So the cable in the middle was changed. If you remove this power steering cooler by releasing this nut and this nut, that gives you access in there to secure that cable in its two clips that live in there. And then obviously the main cable that goes to the car was replaced too. So a fully functioning bonnet. And for anyone curious as to what actually happened with the bonnet cable and lock assembly, this here had deteriorated very badly where it enters the driver's side lock. The cable between the driver side and the passenger side was in a bad way. The outer sheath just fell to pieces. You can see these are pretty manky. So the cable comes from the interior to the driver's side one, and when you pull on that, it then pulls the cable to the passenger side one. So that just acts as a slave really. It's all driven by this one here. Now I was happier to change the whole lot rather than muck about with individual components. I will leave all the part numbers for these in the description below. So I have used this beautiful machine for the last couple of days, and despite the appalling weather, I've really bonded with it. Now as you'll see, some of the interior is still dismantled. This kick panel here, the panel that fits here, had to be removed to replace this bonnet cable mechanism and the under panels on the driver's side. As you can see, these panels are all here, very easy to dismantle. Just Phillips screws with little caps that you have to prise off. Some clips on the underside of this seal trim, and this kind of slots in with these little cutout bits here, and there's a clip that goes in there. This alarm sensor here has been disconnected. I think it's some kind of motion sensor or level sensor. If anyone knows what this actually is specifically, please do feel free to leave it in the comments, but it has been disconnected, as I say. These wires had all been terminated off with insulation tape, but I wasn't happy with that, and I've made a better job of it. Doubled them back on themselves and used heat shrink on all of those for a much more professional job. Now here there is a bit of a twist. You may remember, if you watched my servicing video, that I had a random wire that went from the front to the back of the car. Well, I discovered a little bit more about this wire while I was replacing this bonnet cable. Now it turns out that the cable that runs front to rear comes from the dash insert, and this has been routed in a crazy, stupid way, because it goes up here and then it passes through the outside of the grommet for the bonnet cable. I've put it back as it is just simply because I haven't got time to do it any other way at the moment, but let me give you an idea of where this cable goes from there. So it starts at the instrument housing, speedo, and it goes up there in the corner. And incidentally, that grommet doesn't actually leak. We've probably had the most ideal testing conditions, but just because of where it's positioned, I think it's somehow watertight. I think the reason why this doesn't leak is because the grommet is kind of in here on the bulkhead, and it's in this little sealed off area. So in the engine bay, that cable comes up here, goes all the way under this seal here, re-emerges here, heads on down, follows the fuel lines under the car right the way to the back, and then onto the diff speed sensor with some fairly non-standard connectors. Needless to say, I'm not happy with the routing of this cable, and I'm going to be rerouting this in the car. And behind the driver's seat there is this inspection panel in the carpet, and this really large grommet here is the perfect place to allow a cable to be routed through to the outside of the car in a much tidier fashion. Now looking at this wiring diagram here, you'll see that it is actually a brown and red wire that should run in the actual loom of the vehicle. And I think the normal path would be up through the boot floor, and then it enters the interior of the vehicle about here, behind the passenger seat. It would then pass, now this is speculation based on videos I've watched, but I think it then passes across to the centre console under the carpet, and it would then go along the centre console and then across to the dash. And it's a brown and red wire, which is strange because we've also got another issue that I mentioned in an earlier video, whereby the switch here for the hood should have a feed from the relay in the boot. That's also a brown and red wire. There's no continuity between that wire and the boot, although the feed is present from the actual relay. So maybe we got a couple of wires broken. And as I mentioned, that feed has been taken from the radio wiring. Now the fact that both of these wires that are implicated are brown and red just makes me suspicious that maybe in an attempt to solve one fault, the wrong wire was possibly severed somewhere? Or have they just both broken at a common breakpoint? Incidentally, that speedo issue seems to be quite a common thing. I've read that people lose their speedo and the fuel gauge becomes a bit problematic and they have to renew that wire. But not the way it's been done on this car. I'm really not happy with that. It just seems silly. So I will be doing that properly. In order to reinstate the connector correctly on the differential, I've actually ordered the connector housing here. It's a part number. And these two connectors with tails on them, these are kind of watertight here. Now apparently there are two sizes, so I've got two here in this size, and that's the part number. I didn't want to take a chance, so I've got the other two on order, but they are back ordered, so I'm just waiting for that to all arrive. So I've got everything that I need to reinstate this properly at the back on the differential and reroute that wiring inside the car. And then again, I do need to look at this hood. Not quite so urgent because it works perfectly okay, but you just don't have to have your foot on the brake, which is not the right way for it to be. Now obviously I do want to get that grommet fitted properly for the bonnet cable. I'd just be happier when that's fitted properly and it hasn't got a cable skirting around the outside of it. So I'm going to leave these trims out for the time being until I get that all sorted. It's perfectly drivable like this. So this is where we're up to, and the next video on Friday, it's video 5, is going to be replacing the front brake pads and discs. And when you see that video, you'll understand why I've ordered all these things that you are about to see. So what have we got in here then? 500 quid's worth from Autodoc. Let's start with brakes. And I've got 2 front calipers here, ATE, as on the car. Only these ones will not be rusted to hell. I've got the caliper slider pins, and I've got 2 front brake hoses here and the associated clips. These were incredibly reasonably priced, and they do want the old ones back so I can get my surcharge refunded. Next, we're on to front suspension, and here are 2 front lower arms from Febi Bilstein. Now there were 2 ways you could buy these. One with this bush already fitted, or without. Now, in an ideal world, I wanted them to both be the same, but the prices fluctuate a lot on Autodoc, and the day that I ordered these, the prices were particularly favourable, and I had to just accept that I couldn't get this side with this already on here. I can get this for about 30 quid from Euro Car Parts, so I can get that easily enough for this side, but I couldn't risk the prices going up on these, so I just ordered them as they were, based on what was available at the time. But these are good because they come with all the nuts and fixings and stuff, and I'm very happy with that, so that would be a nice job to do. I've also ordered the drop links here because they're absolutely shot, and you will see that on Friday's video. And these Delphi. This rather sorry looking box is an FAG wheel bearing for the offside front, because there's a little bit of play in it, so that will be changed as well. And it comes with all the associated parts. Hopefully that's not damaged, because the box was in a bit of a state. And next we move on to steering, and here I have a Lemforder track rod complete with end for both sides, and also 2 Febi Bilstein steering rack boot kits complete with clips and grease. So this whole job can be done properly, and hopefully once and for all. I'll also be changing the power steering fluid at the same time. Do get a bit of a strange honking noise from the power steering every now and again when I turn. I've read that is a thing. It could be 25-year-old power steering fluid in there, so I'll change that first. I guess worst case scenario it could be the pump, but if it needs a pump, it's what it'll have. And finally, there is still more. These 2 seals are for the drain and the filler plug on the differential. Here is some fluid for the differential. I'll be changing the oil in that diff. This grade, there's so much discussion on this. This grade here, 75W140, is what BMW say I should have in my car based on its chassis number. So that's what I'm going to do. Some say 75W110, others say 90 in the Torsen diff, which I think mine has. I'm going with this. End of. Here are the bolts and the washers for the rear front lower arm mounting. I've got those from BMW because I knew they wouldn't come with the parts from Autodoc. Here are some door card clips. I know I've got to take the driver's door card off and reposition it to fit this trim around the release lever, door release handle on the inside, because it's not fitted quite right, which means that won't fit. And these are some of the 8mm bolts that secure the under tray at the front on, and bumpers and various other things. These are the ones that turn to dust after 25 years. That's the part number. But here's the cable for the 2 wiring jobs that I'm going to do. I wanted red so it stands out. And here are 2 genuine fuel tank straps, because mine have badly corroded. And here are the 2 bolts. Now, I might have been a bit hasty in buying these, and to be fair, I didn't think they'd even be available, but it seems that to fit these original equipment straps, it's a bit of a pig of a job, and you have to lower the rear suspension subframe and all sorts. Apparently there are 2-piece ones available as an aftermarket. Someone's devised a way of making it 2-piece, so you don't have to remove a whole load of stuff to change these. Maybe I wish I went for that, but from what I understand, these do come and go in terms of availability, so I've got them. I don't need to do it now, but it's there. I could always eBay these and buy the 2-piece ones for ease of fitment, but I'll have a think about that. So as the rain pours down onto my car, which does not make me very happy, this is the situation we are in. Look out for Friday's video on the brake pads and discs at the front, and then there will be videos on all these other components as and when I fit them, weather permitting. Just a word on the part 1, part 2 thing. I think the pads and discs are going to be part 5 on Friday. I'm going to be losing the part element of the videos. There are just going to be so many. It's going to be ridiculous when we get to like part 86 or something. So I'm just going to upload them as individual jobs. So part 5, that will be the last part video, and then they'll just be videos. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe. So many people watch but don't subscribe, and it makes a big difference if you do. Thank you and goodbye.